There's no bigger emotion of selfishness than love. What is love? The soul is already beautiful, fulfilled, pure, and complete, but when it wants to feel its own beauty, it has to experience it. But what is the phenomenon of experiencing its own beauty? That's love. Ironically, the eyes which make us see the whole world cannot see themselves. They need a mirror to do so. So typically eyes search for a mirror to see and consequently realize their own beauty. So does the soul. Soul needs a mirror in order to see its own beauty. The soul needs it and uses a mirror to bask in the glory of its own beauty. So what is this mirror? This mirror is another soul, calm and pure, placid, almost like a lake's surface. When the soul comes across another soul which reflects its own beauty back to it, the soul rejoices in its own beauty, gets self-absorbed, because it realizes it's already so beautiful. It actually doesn't need another. Another is only needed to get its own beauty reflected. That's why phenomenon of love is an extremely selfish one. Because once this purity and beauty of the soul is reflected back to it, the need for the other immediately ceases. So the soul uses the other. But it doesn't do this consciously. This happens. There's no mind involved in this. There's a silent seeking, a longing to know its own self that is a non-conscious effort, and a non-conscious effort is a flow. Flow is a consequence of feeling, not of thinking. Process of thinking involves calculations, manipulations. That's mind's job. Mind always individuates. Everything it comes across, it cannot multiply. Soul, on the other hand, doesn't act. It doesn't do anything. It simply seeks its own realization of its intrinsic beauty. It's without making an effort. It's a longing for knowing and realizing its own beauty. It doesn't even realize it's seeking that until, as a consequence to this longing and in accordance to the intensity of this longing, it comes across another soul. That soul through which the first soul sees and realizes its own beauty simply acts as a mirror. There's no doing in love. There's no action involved. Now when the other soul steps in, two things happen. One, the soul, owing to the other soul's non-conscious act of reflection of its own beauty, feels a deep sense of gratitude for the other. Second, since the other simply reflects its own beauty back to it, it finds the other beautiful as well. But the moment the reflected beauty of its own soul is realized, the other is no longer needed, because the other has already given a glimpse to the soul of its own beauty, and its own beauty is so fulfilling. It no longer has the urge or thirst left for anything else, including the other. The other actually, if is there, it's good. If goes. Even this doesn't affect this first soul, as now it is basking in the beauty of its glory. It's like someone appeared, introduced you to your own selves. Now, after this introduction, there's actually no need for the other. That's why love has the highest sense of gratitude, but no attachment. Because after getting absorbed in its own beauty, the first soul realizes it is everything that is to be realized, to be known. And there's only one thing and this realization also makes the first soul realize that other is also it, because all is made of one thing. They way this first soul realizes its own beauty and being through the other. The other would and must realize its own beauty. It's like one coming to a realization which fulfills it, then one now knows, since there is no other for it, there is no it for the other. It's all just one thing made up of the same very material. Now what is to be understood is when the soul comes across another, it doesn't happen as a consequence of an action on its part. It's causeless. It's like a crow alighting a coconut tree branch and accidentally a coconut falling at the same very time. The alighting of the crow has no connection with the falling of the coconut, though it might seem so. Similarly, A soul coming across another might be due to an intense urge or longing for knowing and realizing its own self, or it might be an accidental occurrence of grace. Therefore, there is neither an effort nor an action involved. And hence, since this whole occurrence is causeless, love doesn't have a consequence, since there was never an actual cause involved in the first place other than the soul longing to know its own self. Dares. No external consequence. That's why love is always fulfilled in its own selves. In fact, it uses the other for its own fulfillment, but it does so non-consciously. And that's why all the way love is a spiritual phenomenon, a journey of one's own transformation, wherein other is a facilitator. But the key point that is to be realized, wherein most of the souls falter as the mind interferes. And that key point is when the soul comes across the other, whether the first soul looks into the second or at it, whether the first soul looks in the other, its mirror, and rejoices in its own reflection, or it rather prefers to look at the mirror, and rather than seeing its own beauty, falls in love with the beauty of the mirror. This is a trap, as the first soul is not able to see its own beauty, but rather falls in love with the beauty of the mirror, not seeing into it its own beauty, because if it would have seen into the other's beauty, that is, if it would have looked into the mirror rather than looking at it, it would have got a glimpse into its own essence and beauty. Now, the other love is simply a phenomenon of resonance. If the other being used to reflect the beauty of the other utilizes this as an opportunity non-consciously and simultaneously looks into the first mirror, not at it, its own beauty too is reflected back and it realizes its own very beauty. Now, this is a case of two mirrors non-consciously reflecting each other. In each other, consequence is infinity. And that's why love is infinite, but it's very rare for two such mirrors of and at the same awareness level to come across each other. It's very rare. That's why a Shams and Rumi only happens once in 800 years. But whenever such a thing happens on the planet, its vibrations and ripples engulf time. And that's how timeless love stories are created. Or rather, they happen, and when they happen, the reflection of such stories keeps the concept, just the concept, of love alive. Though in reality, actual love only happens when two souls of and at such an awareness level come across each other. So if the other doesn't realize the essence of this love by seeing its own beauty, then the first soul, which sees and realizes its own beauty through the other, gets freedom, and the other gets bounded, because other makes the same very mistake of not seeing its own beauty in the first, but rather getting attached to the mirror. That's how misery happens for the other, though it is actually self-created. It is born out of ignorance, rather than awareness. Love sets free. Attachment binds. And such love stories take a complex form. Cause one is free, the other ends up being bounded. One is in bliss, the other is in misery. The cause of this complexity is due to the application of mind. Whenever, from whosoever's end, it is applied, that one suffers and ends up being in misery, cause mind brings along with it all kinds of impurities and distortions. The moment mind comes in between by whosoever, the souls are bound to part. But even in this parting, if the first gains freedom, the other goes through deep agony and pain of being separated. Now, in this agony and pain, there's still a possibility of the other to realize that in the beauty of the other, its own beauty lies.